And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and I am joined today by a guest who has not one but two amazing subjects that he covers and is an author of several book series, which I gotta say, hats off to you. I am like in awe of how you're able to accomplish that, but I am proud, I am blessed, and I am grateful to be able to introduce you all to the one, the only, the amazing, talented Rob Gutro.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me. That was quite a build-up. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, and it's well deserved, actually.
Yeah, it's good to be here, and I look forward to talking about all kinds of subjects with you tonight. And
Yes. And before we do that, would you mind introducing yourself and giving a little bit of background so everyone who may not, for some reason, be on Amazon looking at books may not have found you?
sure, I'd be happy to. So, my name is Rob Gutro. I'm a paranormal investigator. I'm a medium, and I'm an author of 11 books and counting. I have a whole bunch more in the queue. All of my books are based on my own experiences. So you won't read about anything in my books anywhere else. They're all my paranormal experiences. I have three series of books. One is Pets in the Afterlife, where I teach you, the pet parent, how your pets communicate from the other side. The second series of books is Ghosts on a Medium's Vacation. And that series of books comes from my different vacations where I went, England, Ireland, and the Birdcage Theater in Tombstone, Arizona. And I ran into dead people who wanted to talk to me. And then I proved who they were. So that they're full of history and hauntings. And the third series is Ghosts versus Spirits, Earthbound Ghosts versus Spirits who crossed over.
Wow. So, one question I'm sure a lot of people ask, and it came to mind when you were describing your series, is a lot of paranormal investigators say, I'm ghost hunting or I saw this spirit. So, how do you distinguish the difference?
So early on, I decided that there needs to be some designation between the two because people use the word ghost and spirit interchangeably. And to me, they're really not. Because what I found is that a ghost is an earthbound entity of energy coupled with memories, personality, and knowledge that used to be in the physical form and becomes energy and decides to stay at a fixed location of their choosing, either where they die, where they grew up, where they worked, something like that. A spirit is one that once the body dies, we have that opportunity to cross over it through that tunnel or doorway to the other side, and they're the ones that cross over into the light. And as a spirit, they can communicate with us anywhere, anytime, any place in the world. But ghosts can only communicate with us in the location they choose to stay.
Okay, so that explains why some people have the notion that, as they put it, spirits are stuck here versus able to go anywhere. Is you're saying they're more of ghost
Mhm.
and attached to where something happened in their life, so that's where they choose to stay.
Sure. Yes. That's why hospitals are haunted. Um, um, Asylums are haunted. Prisons are haunted because that's where people died. Those are places people died, and they lingered too long, um, and they got stuck. And I'm actually a meteorologist in my day job, as we mentioned before the show. So I use the science of energy to explain how they get strong enough to communicate and the methods in which they use.
So you're a proponent then of, because I hear a lot of times when I'm on an investigation and everyone's like, "Oh, it's gonna rain," or "It's gonna storm," that everyone's like, all the investigators get more excited because they're like, "Okay, it's gonna be more active tonight."
Well, there is some truth to that, absolutely, because water is an energy source for earthbound ghosts to draw on, even spirits who've crossed over. And lightning is a tremendous energy source. If you think about lightning, the temperature of lightning is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the surface of the sun. That's a lot of energy that a ghost can use.
Right, and it's interesting too is I don't know if I have the science of it right, is I I came to understand it that lightning starts from the ground here on the earth and goes up
Mhm.
actually into the clouds.
Yeah, it
And
meets in the
so
middle.
right.
Yeah.
So in essence, they're using the energy of the land that that
Mhm.
is how the lightning. Okay, so that's why land-based spirits then can do more things, is because everything's using the energy of the land.
Yeah, and again, I call them ghosts. So
Right.
yes.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, no. So I came up with this designation a long time ago to try and figure out what to call what. So that's what in my first book. It's called Ghosts versus Spirits Explained, and that's where I make that designation. So that because there's a couple of other factors there too, Michael, is that I've found not only do they use physical energies like the electricity and heat and light and water to get strong enough to communicate, but they use emotional energies too. So spirits who've crossed over, like our great grandparents or our grandparents, use faith, love, and hope to get strong enough to come back and give us signs. But ghosts, earthbound ones, they use negative emotional energy. So fear, anxiety, depression, and anger are things that fuel a ghost, an earthbound ghost.
It's interesting you say that because when I first started investigating, I viewed it as coming from not corporate America, so to speak, but professional business world.
Hmm.
And so I was like doing everything like, okay, I'd ask the questions and I'd be straight, strict, in my emotions, keep everything in check. And just like I would if I was to go into like an interview or have a meeting, and I was getting very little to no activity. It's like I could sense something's there, but they didn't want to interact. And then I happened to watch Haunted Live with the Tennessee Ray Chasers, and they hazed one of their new members on the show. And they all started laughing and having fun, like cutting up about it. And I was like, my mind goes, huh, if these people can have fun, why can't I? And as I let go of the old way and shifted into a more relaxed, fun energy and laughed on occasion, I noticed I started getting EVPs. I started seeing apparitions. It's like everything wanted to be around. And so to me, it's interesting going how you're saying they feed off the negative, and I found they actually were liking the positive.
So yeah, so the energy, I totally understand where you're going. The energy though that they feed off does not reflect their personality. So personality and energy are different. And so I make that distinction because you can have a ghost who's earthbound, who's a really happy-go-lucky person, um, loved living in a place and so forth, and will be drawn to somebody like you who will be lighthearted and so forth, but they still absorb negative energy. So if there's any negative emotional energy, and there wouldn't be if you were in a lighthearted mode, they would have to draw on physical energies instead to communicate with you, like the heat, the light, the water, electricity.
Okay.
Um, so you wouldn't be giving them any energy if you were in a good mood. um,
Well,
not
there you
that.
go. Note to investigators: investigate in a good mood because they won't be feeding on your energy.
Yeah, well, so they'll use physical energies, and
Right.
I've had that experience too. Is that we've run into some ghosts that were benign. I just went on an investigation. There was a little boy, and he was feeding off the energy of electricity, um, like draining batteries and so forth. So they would do that instead because they can't get the negative emotional energy.
Right. And that explains why we will always charge our equipment, and within an hour you're stopping because some equipment has failed because the battery has gone dead.
Yeah. So do you put extra batteries in your car? Because that's what our team has done.
I do.
You do. Okay.
I have a little baggie of triple A's, little baggie of double A's, and then uh, sometimes I'll throw in a 9 volt or a C or D because those aren't as used as much. But I also have friends that I investigate with that have those big, like, tool chest looking things, and you open it up and it's rows and rows and rows of different size batteries. And I'm like,
Gosh.
man, Costco and Sam's and all those places must love when you come by.
Yeah. They're expensive.
They are.
Yeah. That's crazy. One other thing I wanted to point out though that I've learned is that not only do they absorb the negative emotions if there are any, but they emit them. So they emit negative emotional energy. So for people who have a ghost in your house, even if it's a ghost who's benign, who's happy, who doesn't bother you, they're still emitting negative emotional energy. It's tied to the earth. And what that does is that causes discord. It causes people to be easy to be angered, more depressed, um, more short with people. Um, so that's what having an earthbound ghost in your house will do. Again, spirits come and go because they're not here. They've crossed over. So spirits only come to give us a message or let us know that they love us, or they come on birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays to say hello. But ghosts stick where they are.
Okay, and that kind of makes sense too. Why we had the classification of residual
Mhm.
versus intellectual versus, I even forget what they call the third one because it's like it's just there and you just got lucky. There's like no like rhyme or reason to how that one happened, but the residual, it seems like it's like what you're saying is the classic earthbound ghost who's there. So he's going through his routines because might as well. I'm here, make myself useful in his
Mhm.
world or her world. And I like how the distinction people get confused with is intellectual, is they think, oh, because they're responding, they are intellectual and I'm physically talking to them. And I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, like the starlight has burned out at its origin, but it's just getting to us. So we're seeing it. So can some of these intellectual ghosts that we're talking to, that we're having conversation, could that be them in the past getting caught up and we're actually able to hear the signal now?
Well, that's an interesting question. That brings about the question of time travel, I think, and I'm not versed in that.
Well, I was curious with the science that if you dealt with like the energy, like that movie Frequency, where the storm was the perfect storm, and he was able to use the ham radio to talk to another to himself on the ham radio in the past.
Oh, I remember that movie. Yeah, no, I've not encountered that kind of thing.
Okay, I was just
That's interesting.
wondering with as we're talking about using the energies, if that really is a possibility that could really happen.
Well, gosh, there are so many things that we don't know. Anything's possible, I guess. We'll
I
find out
know.
we'll find out when we get to the other side.
I know, and I always tell people, I'm like, that'll be the first thing I'll do is I will sit down and I will do a Q&A with everyone because it's like now I got the answers.
Mhm.
But it's like you talk to other people, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll talk to you on the other side." And it's like when they get there, it's like, "Hello, where are you? You said you were going to do this. We're waiting."
I actually do know some people who have asked their loved one to give them signs, and they've actually received signs, but they don't come automatically. They don't come right after somebody dies. They will come after a couple of days or a week or something like that. And the other thing too is that everybody has to be kind of open-minded to signs, and things are not everything is a sign. Somebody said to me, because in my Pets in the Afterlife book, I wrote that I know that our dog Sprite, who was a dachshund mix, sent a yellow and black butterfly right after he passed, only because that was the first butterfly I saw of the summer, and it was July 8th, and it flew around our dogs the same exact way that our dog Sprite used to amble around on the ground for about 15 or 20 minutes, and they didn't, and the other dogs didn't go after it. That's how I knew it was a sign. So not everything is a sign. It has to behave in an odd way.
So let me ask you this, because having having a dog when I was growing up, well, actually, I had two growing up, and they were never in the house that I was in, but I would always swear I would hear like their paw nails hitting like a hardwood floor. And even though I didn't have a hardwood floor, I'd still hear that sound
Mm-hmm.
like they're coming around the corner. And so I'd look and be like, are they coming? And then being like, wait, I only have one dog now and he's on my bed.
Right.
So who's coming? And then going, oh, it could be my other two. But, because they were never in that house, can they do that? And would that be considered a sign that they were there?
Yes, yes, and yes. Um, First of all, they don't have to have lived in a particular structure to find you. The love that you shared with them is what links you together. So they would be spirit. They would be dogs that have crossed over, because they can come to you anywhere, any place, anytime in the world. Whether you're in a new home, whether you're on vacation, whether you're in a different country, it doesn't matter where you are. The love that you share with them is the energy that links you together. So what you heard was their presence to let you know that they are still very much around you and watching over you from spirit. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. My other question about pets in the afterlife is, so the first two dogs I had, I was there when they passed.
Mm-hmm.
My first one, I went through and adopted. Did all the paperwork, took care of him. It was, for all 10 purposes, my pet, which I viewed as my little one. That's just my quirky style. But I wasn't present when he passed. And so I find that like I don't hear his paw prints and patter like I do the others, but I will find myself going in to call like my new dogs that my parents have and we share his name instead of the dog's name. And so I'm wondering if that's his way of saying, I know you weren't there, but I'm still here. It's okay.
That's exactly right. Yes. So what they will do is from spirit, they will influence you to call their name by mistake, to let you know that they're around. And then when you say it, then you do a double take. The same thing happened with us. We adopted this little dog, this little 10-year-old rescue dog, and his name is Cody. And he behaves very much like our dog Franklin that passed away, because what I've found is that uh, I found that when a dog passes, they come back to train a new dog to have some of the habits they used to have. So you'll know that they're still there in spirit. But I actually wound up calling Cody Franklin. I thought it was like an accident, but it wasn't an accident, because Franklin let me know that not only was he visiting, but he was also training Cody to do things that he used to do.
Okay. And I know this is going to sound weird in a way, but I wonder, because here on the earth plane, and I'll use that term to make sense of this question, dogs, cats, horses, all the animals, that we consider pets or we come across don't speak like we do. But when they go to the other side and they're in spirit form,
Mhm.
can they vocalize words to us, or will they maintain their we're going to talk through other means?
They basically communicate the way they did on Earth, but the difference is, like when I do pet readings, they will repeat words that they heard, so they know. So, for instance, I just did a reading for a dog this past weekend, and he kept saying the word bear, bear, and he wouldn't define what it was, but he kept saying bear. So, um, when I wrote to the pet parent, that was just one of the many things that the dog conveyed. And she wrote me back and she said a bear was his favorite toy, and he would go to bed with it every single night. And bear was a very, very important part of his life. So they can repeat words that they knew, that they learned, because they learn a lot of words. I mean, border collies have been known, for instance, to learn up to 1,000 words. It's
Wow.
crazy. Yeah. um,
Yeah. And I don't know if it's been your experience, but I find like we feel like we know everything to know about animals because people wrote a book and we read the book, and like dogs being colorblind and can't tell this or that, and I swear my dog that I recently lost was like, you could put 13 tennis balls on the ground,
mhm,
some double color, some one color, or the regular green. And I'd say, go get the purple one.
mhm.
And he would look through all the tennis balls and grab the one that's purple.
Yep.
And he would always know the color. And I would say to people, can dogs tell color? And they're like, no.
So I've done a lot of research about dogs because I've had dogs for a long, long time. So what scientists have realized in the last 10 years is that dogs can actually see yellow and blue, and that all the other colors appear in different shades of gray. But that said, um, if you teach a dog that a ball is purple, they will identify it by the shade that they see it as, and they'll remember it, and then they'll go get it. Um, I will tell you, as a longtime dog dad, um, all the toys that I buy that are mostly yellow or blue are the ones that are the favorites of our three dogs.
I'd have to think about that with our new dog because he's the one that actually does toys. And the other one kind of just looks at it. He's like, I'll take it, but then I'm just going to lay with it. And I'm not
Right.
going to do anything with it. And it's like, what is your deal?
Yeah.
But I also love how you said dogs or pets will come back to train the next pet,
Mhm.
because we had one pass and we swear, because we adopted before he passed
Mhm.
the other dog, and was like, he was like showing him the ropes, and we're like, he trained him. And so now it's become like a legacy thing, we feel like, where one trains the next one that trains the next one.
You're absolutely right. Yep.
So,
Absolutely right. And that happens a lot. So, and I get a lot of questions from people who say, well, my dog passed away. I just adopted this 2-year-old dog. Um, and this dog must be my dog reincarnated. And I will tell them, I said, that's not, first of all, it's not possible because your dog just passed away a month ago. This dog you adopted is 2 years old.
yeah.
Okay. That doesn't work. Um, but our dogs in spirit really do come back and train the new dog to have maybe 1 or 2 habits that they had. And note, Michael, that the habits don't have to be good habits.
Oh yeah, we've noticed.
Yeah.
We have mine started out as a wild child, we would call him, and later in life tempered and became the docile, like professor style that the other dog was. And now we have a new one that's like a wild child, 4 year old, that's
Oh boy.
calming down and starting to settle into the role of, okay, I don't have to be jumping everywhere. I can be okay just sitting on the ground or sitting on the lap. But I'm curious though if the notion of pets having favorites, because we'll notice like we
Mhm.
have two dogs. One will stay in one's room for the night,
Mhm.
one stays in the other room. And during the day, they'll usually spend more time, like mine, who sleeps in my room for the majority of the night,
Mhm.
will sit in my lap majority of the day
Mhm.
or follow me around, where the one that sleeps in my mom's room follows her around. Is that they're claiming this is our favorites like we think they are, or what causes them to do that, do you think?
Um, they they always choose the best friend. It's just like we do. We always choose a best friend. So we have 3 dogs, and 2 of them follow me everywhere. The third one, when we adopted the third one, I told my husband Tom that he needs a dog that bonds to him because his dog Franklin had passed away. And so when we adopted this dog, I told him, I said, this dog has to ride in your lap all the way home, get used to your scent, and so forth. And so this dog bonded to him. Um, and he has the same personality as Tom. Sometimes stubborn, sometimes grumpy. And the other 2 are really easygoing. I like to think that I'm easygoing. So I think, and we also they also learn the same behaviors from us. They learn the same attitudes from us, I think. So that's another thing. So yes, they do pick their person, if you will. But they still, they still love everybody in the house unconditionally. But everybody has their favorites.
Right. Okay. And we have one dog that does something really quirky. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to pick your brain about it and
Sure.
see what you think. So he was around with my dog, and we went to the vet one time, and mine didn't come home, but he did, the newer one. And well, he did come home. Let me scratch that. I was thinking about different circumstance, but so he was coming. They would go on car rides, be totally fine. Then mine passed away here,
Hmm.
and we went to go to a vet or go to an appointment somewhere with him in the car, and he just cries. He will not stop crying. Doesn't matter how short of a trip it is or how long. And we're like, where did this come from? And we were thinking, is it because the friend was in the car with him and now is not in the car, and it's been over a year and he's never going to get over that? Or is it he may never have really liked car rides and he's just now showing us that he is not a car dog?
So did he ride in a car before the passing of your other dog
Yes.
and not have a problem?
No.
Okay. So yeah. So apparently I would say probably that riding in a car is now traumatic because he may be afraid that the same thing is going to happen to him, that he may not come back.
So, yeah, and we keep telling him, we're gonna, like, we would be dropping him off for daycare,
Hmm.
and we'd be like, we're gonna come back and get you. You're gonna be okay. But he would not have it. But then be fine where we got. When we got there, he'd be totally fine. He'd be jovial, playful, and then he would cry on the way home. And we're like, dude, you're home. Why are you crying? You came home. So, what can we do to snap him out of that, so to speak? Or is there anything that can be done?
That I don't know, because he was obviously traumatized by the passing of the other dog. Um, what I would suggest is talk to an animal communicator or an animal behaviorist. Those two different roles work with living animals, to try and figure out how to overcome that. So animal behaviorists and animal communicators are different from pet mediums, because pet mediums like me can only talk to pets that have passed,
Right.
but animal communicators can communicate with living animals.
Right. And I understand that. I was just
Yeah.
curious because you said you did a lot of research into dogs and everything. And so I was wondering if you ever came across that in your research.
Yeah, I think it sounds like trauma. It just sounds like emotional trauma.
Okay.
Yep.
Linda is asking a question of, does Rob do remote readings of pets?
All the time. I do them all the time. Um, but right now I'm booked out a year, so I've had to stop taking appointments for the moment. I'll reopen the appointment book in a couple months once I start to catch up a little bit, because right now people are waiting a year to get a reading, and that's a long time. So in the meantime, I suggest that's why I wrote the Pets in the Afterlife series of books. If people read those series of books, they can learn how to recognize the signs from their own pets without a medium. So, and also, there are a lot of the chapters in my Pets in the Afterlife 2, 3, and 4 are readings that I've done, and that the pet parents graciously allowed me to publish. That shows you different ways that pets communicate from the afterlife. So yeah, I do them. I may be reopening. I'll probably be reopening appointments sometime this fall, but it won't start until August 2025.
So keep that in mind.
I know it's a long time.
No, and it's understandable. And, kudos to you for not only being booked that far out, but respecting that and saying to yourself, I can't take any more because I need to catch up, and not sitting there going like some people go, well, let's keep going because the iron's hot, so to speak. And so let's keep booking while the booking's good. And then it's like burn out. And you're like, but I still have like another year or two of appointments. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I also don't think it's fair to, people need, and I understand because I've lost 4 dogs. I have 4 dogs in spirit. When our pets pass, we want immediate comfort. And again, that's why I wrote the books. You can get immediate comfort, and I often tell people that if you know someone who lost a pet, give them one of my books and let them recognize that our pets, number one, continue to send signs from the other side, and number two, learn how they do it so that they'll get comfort. So yeah, and I totally agree. I don't want to book out 2 years. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, because, and also in actuality, it's like, if you think about it, within 2 years, they might have stumbled upon the answer to themselves, and they're like, well, now I got this appointment with Rob, and I already know the answer, so now what do I do? And it's like, yeah. And so it created awkward reading.
And Michael, you're right, because some people have canceled their appointments after waiting 6 months and said, "Oh, I've already received a number of signs. I've read your books. I've seen this, and this, and I feel much better now." And I'm like, "Good. That's the point. That's why I wrote them." And on the other hand, there are people that I will email back, and they will have forgotten they made an appointment. After I forgot what I had for breakfast yesterday, right? So
Right.
you can't expect somebody to remember in a year that they're going to get a reading.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why, like, I book out till December. And once I book all of December with shows, I stop. And I'm like, I'm not looking for guests right now because I want to finish out the year
Hmm.
and then look at December, go, okay, what tweaking are we going to do? And little housekeeping. And then I'll be like, all right, now let's get ready for next year. And I feel like if I book, and say to a team, hey, let's do January and it's August. Well, the reason I booked them, maybe they have an event coming up, and then
Hmm.
it's going to be months in the past, and they're like, well, we kind of, the team that we booked you with is no longer with us. And so here's all the new info. You got to redo all your promo stuff. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I understand how you're saying with, you know, drawing the line and everything. And Linda's asking now, and this is an interesting question. I've never thought about this. Like, you go to a psychic fair, are there pet fairs where people could visit during the day and you just do pet readings? Or anyone, if you ever heard of that.
No, I have not. I do a lot of personal appearances on the weekends, and because I'm still employed during the week as a scientist, so I do everything on the weekends. But if anybody is in New England, I give lectures at animal rescues and I do them as fundraisers, and I teach people how their pets communicate from the other side. I am teaching paranormal courses in northern New England um, from this September through December, all kinds of things in two different adult education schools. Um, I do interviews like we're doing. Um, so there's a whole host of things that I do. But so they can go to robgutro.com/events and they can find out where I'm going to be and come and meet me. And sometimes pets do come through, or you learn why you're there. So
Yeah,
there's a
and
lot of places you can find me.
I'm kind of curious too if you've ever have done a reading without giving details of who the people are, and like say they had a dog and they're like, yeah, you had this cat, coming by, and you guys really ought to look at that cat some more, and maybe bring in that cat. Or do they give you signs to say to somebody, okay, you really should adopt this one that you're looking at because that's the one I'm picking that would be better for you?
So good question. So pets do pick out the next pet that they want us to adopt. Um, and I'll share a story with you about a woman had shared this with me. She said that she had a dog that was black and white. And she said she wanted, when that dog passed, that was a very special dog to her. She said she never wanted to adopt another dog with the same coloration because she wanted her dog to be special. So when she was finally ready to adopt, she and her husband went to a rescue, a shelter rather. They picked out a dog, this light brown colored, medium-sized dog, and they put in the paperwork. And they were going to go. They were going to go the next day to pick up the dog. Well, they got there the next day, and the dog had been adopted by somebody else. So then she asked if there's another medium-sized dog with the same kind of temperament, and they brought out a black and white dog that looked just like her other dog that passed away. And she said, I know I promised myself I wouldn't do this, but I fell in love with the dog and I adopted the dog and I love this dog. And she said, I want to know why this happened. And I said, because your other dog led you to this dog so you would know that your other dog is around in spirit often. That's how it works.
Okay. So Linda, who joined us a little bit late, is asking, what is your day job? You keep talking about what kind of science work do you work with?
So I am a meteorologist, but I also work with people who are astrophysicists, who are planetary scientists, who are heliophysicists. So I work with a lot of scientists, a lot of fellow scientists in my day job. So that's why when I talk about the paranormal, I explain the paranormal in terms of energy, as we discussed earlier. And the thing I cite as the baseline is the law of conservation of energy, which simply states that energy can't be destroyed; it can only be transformed. So the energy that flows within us in our living physical body becomes energy with personality, memories, and knowledge of this life. And that's when we choose to be an earthbound ghost or a spirit who's crossed over.
Right. And so I'm kind of curious a little bit. And as we keep talking about, having the science versus
Mhm.
the paranormal field, so to speak, and all of that I wonder, when you started getting your gift of being the medium, was my first question with that is, was pets the first mediumship that you had, or did that come second? And the second question is, having the science background that you have,
Mhm.
was it easy to go, okay, I'm a medium, I'm talking to people on the other energy on the other side, or did you have a lot to overcome?
Well, I had a lot of figuring out to do. But to answer your first question, no, the very first experience was when I was 13 and my grandfather appeared to me 6 or 7 months after he died. He scared the heck out of me. And then I had a couple of other encounters with humans. When my puppy passed in 2005, that opened the door for me to communicate with pets on the other side. So I can communicate with both people and pets, but I like to focus on pets because they're full of love and they don't have attitude. So um, so to answer your second question about being a scientist, what I do is I explain how the paranormal works with science. So I've learned to explain how cold spots develop. Why we feel cold spots when in the presence of a ghost or spirit. Have you ever heard an explanation for that?
Now that I think about it, no, I haven't.
Okay. So what I've come to find out is that because ghosts or spirits are energy, they have to draw energy from somewhere. When there's no energy available, no other source, what they do is they take the energy from the motion of air molecules They take that motion and they slow it down. And when you have fast moving molecules of air, you have warm air. When you have slow moving molecules of air, like in the Arctic, you have cold air. And that's why there's a cold spot that forms where the ghost or spirit is standing.
That actually makes sense. And that seems so obvious and so easy. It's like,
well, I had to think about these things. I also came up with the with the reason why ghosts can't cross themselves over after a while, and that again is also the science of energy. It's because when we die, that energy leaves our body and lingers earthbound. When we die, we have the opportunity. We have so much energy that we have the ability to open a doorway to the other side. Over time, just like a battery, that energy drains. It goes lower and lower and lower, which is why they need to suck energy from somewhere else. Because their energy gets below a certain threshold, which I don't know what it would be, they lose the ability to have enough energy to open that doorway to cross themselves over after a while. So to me, it's all about energy, and ghosts are like a battery.
so that makes sense why when you go and you talk with mediums, when somebody has passed recently, they will inevitably always say, make sure you don't, keep this person here, let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And, all of that, because I never thought about that. And I always figured, because like you're saying, they're just one physical energy form to another. They can cross whenever they want, so we're not keeping them here or vice versa. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I never thought about there being like a battery that drains over time,
See what happens
which
when you
makes
talk to
sense.
a scientist?
Yeah, but it makes sense like why, for example, like battlefields
Mm-hmm.
are so much more haunted than everything else is because you have to think about you seeing this person die.
Mm-hmm.
For them, they were looking at somebody, and then the next minute they're looking at something completely different, and it's got to take a while for that to register.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. They linger too long because I found that in cases of sudden death, whether it's a battlefield or whether it's a car accident or something else, that we awaken as energy with our memories. And there's a blackout period. So right when if it's traumatic, there's a blackout period. We don't know what happened. And we wake up as energy confused, and we linger too long trying to figure it out. And that's when we get stuck because our energy starts getting depleted over time.
And I also wonder, though, because I have seen and experienced where there are spirits who, have really old energy. So it could have been like you're saying, or a ghost that lingered too long.
Mhm.
But then with say two or three people there, when having like maybe a couple pieces of equipment which uses battery power, they're able to raise the energy field up, and it's like you feel the energy of that ghost
Mhm.
transferring and going to the other side. Is that actually possible? Or is it just our imagination is trying to make us feel better that we did this and he's really still here?
Well, it depends. I guess every situation is different. But one thing that I've done with the Inspired Ghost Tracking team is that in order to cross a ghost over, we have to combine the emotional energies of about 4 or 5 people. We need that much emotional energy. And what we do is we focus on one point in the room, as long as the ghost is there, focus on one point of the room, focus our energies in opening a doorway. We all have to envision this in our minds. And then what we do is we connect to the energy of the ghost, and then we connect to the energy on the other side, and we try to bring in relatives to the ghost who have crossed over in spirit to help bring them across. We've crossed over quite a number of ghosts. And the interesting thing about that scientifically is that when a ghost crosses over, we know it has because we always feel a burst of warm air. I can't explain that. I think it's just an energy feedback, but there's always a burst of warm air.
Right. And when I've done it or participated with people, it's like how I would describe is there's like a heaviness there while they're there. And then all of a sudden the room just lightens up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like a feeling of they're gone.
Yeah, the energy changes in the room. Absolutely.
So Linda's asking, would you say that you're empathic? And I want to kind of ask this in another way as well, Linda, if that's okay. Is I know people assume because you're mediums or psychics that you're in tune with the emotions and the spirit as a whole or the ghost as a whole. But is that really what you connect to, or is some connect to the feelings and emotions of the spirit and or ghost, and some connect to the words? So are we assuming empathy is always connecting to the emotions with the psychic medium?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will tell you that I'm connecting when I connect with pets. I'll use pets as an example. When I connect with pets, I can always feel the love. I can feel the love, and often I will find myself getting emotional, and sometimes, depending on the connection with the pet, I'll actually be in tears as I'm typing out what the pet is telling me. So there's empathy there. But it could work either way, really.
Yeah, because the reason I ask is because I feel like it's one of those terms that people get confused and misidentify when dealing with someone, and someone says, "Oh, this is what I'm getting." They automatically assume, "Oh, because you're a medium and you're saying, oh, this person is experienced this, that you're feeling what they're feeling, and it may not be." So that's why I was asking,
Mhm.
is because I've learned different classifications.
Yeah. So it could be either.
So I know we're getting close to the end of the hour. Do you have time to answer a few more questions, or do you
Sure.
need to go?
No, I'm still caffeinated.
So one of my questions is, because I'm always drawn to Ireland. I feel like it's a home away from home.
Mhm.
And you did a book of the paranormal Ireland. And so I'm curious, when you were over in Ireland, were a lot of the cases, were you there with doing people or pets? And my other question is, if it was pets, would the Fae be classified under pets in your book or people?
Um, so I will answer the pets question first. No, I did not encounter any pets. So I don't know how to answer your second question. And for the first question, I did not go over there for a paranormal investigation. I did not go over there to investigate at all. I went over there for vacation, and I wasn't thinking about anything. So the name of the book is Ghosts of Ireland on a Medium's Vacation. When I travel, my guard is down because my intention is just to vacation like everybody else and relax. And I'm not thinking about ghosts. I'm not thinking about spirits. I'm not thinking about dead people. I'm thinking about, wow, I've never been to Dublin before. What's it like? So while I'm on vacation, I always keep a travel journal, a handwritten travel journal, which is how I got to write all of these travel related books. Um, and I sketch ghosts out too. I can see them in my mind, or I can sometimes I can actually see them, but usually I see them in my mind and I sketch them out. So those are in my books too. Um, and then I try to prove their identities, and I've been very successful at doing that too. Um, so they're all people in Ireland, and they're all my experiences. So it's not, you're not going to read about, you know, somebody that died in Kilmaine jail in Dublin that's been told over and over again. No, these are my experiences. And then I prove the history when I come back and I write the book.
And I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be my next question is when you travel, how do you shut it off? It's because
Wish I could. There are some really, really persistent ghosts that want their story told. Um, I will tell you, there was one vacation that I went on, and I did not get anything. I went to Italy. We went to Italy for 7 days. We went to various parts of Italy, and I had a sinus infection that was impacted, and it was painful. And when you're sick and you're a medium, that blocks all energy out because all the energy in your body is being used to combat whatever illness you have. So I got nothing in Italy.
okay,
Yeah.
that not that I wish anyone to get sick, but if you're looking for a break,
It was a break. I mean, it wasn't the most pleasant vacation, feeling sick with a constant headache, but yeah.
right. The other myth that I'm curious about too, your opinion on is I'm sure you've heard like liquor. If you drink alcohol, it will affect your abilities and your gifts. Have you found that to be true at all?
Well, I don't drink, so I have actually never had alcohol.
Oh, okay.
So I wouldn't know, but my guess is that if it could impair you driving, it can impair your mediumship.
Okay. And I guess the question I'm sure you get asked a lot, but I'm going to ask in probably a way you've never been asked is when you're planning like trips,
Mhm.
do you sit there and go, hey, look, I haven't seen a book, say, example, Scotland, a book about Scotland. Let's go to Scotland. And you plan a trip around that and you're feeling drawn to that. Do you feel like that's the ghosts or spirits saying, hey, Rob, it's time for you to come to our country and tell our story? We want to be in your book.
I can honestly say I've never had that thought or experience. Usually, usually I actually let my husband plan all the trips. I don't really care. I don't care where we go. Just go. and I don't. And that said too is that with all of these trips, I've never investigated anything. I've never known any of the history of Ireland or of England at all. Um, so it was all a learning experience, and I actually learned it. I learned history by talking to the dead people when I was in the various places, whether they're cathedrals or castles or pubs or houses or mansions or anything. So that's really cool.
That is actually kind of cool. And it also makes it really interesting because there's always been this nomer of they're wandering around and they'll see you as a beacon because of your energy and
Mhm.
so-called light that you're giving off and gravitate towards. And so it's sounding like that's really been your experience of not going with any intentions, but everybody when you're there comes and says, "Hey, this guy's here. Let's go get our
They,
story out while he's here."
yeah, they do. So ghosts can sense people who can sense them. And one of my favorite uh, encounters was in England when I went to Hever Castle. And this is my book, Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation. Um, when I walked in the castle, and I knew nothing about it because I didn't plan the trip. I didn't know the history. I didn't know anything. I let my other half do it. So when we got in there, um, I was walked in through the front door, and I was standing there next to him, and suddenly I heard a man next to me talking in my ear, and he said, "Hello, my name is George." And I looked, and there was nobody there, and I said, "Okay, hello, George." and um, and I turned to my husband Tom, and I said, "Do you know why somebody named George would be here living as a ghost?" And he said that would be George Boleyn, Anne Boleyn's brother, because this was the home of the Boleyn family.
Oh
So when
wow.
George was executed, he chose to spend his afterlife at Hever Castle. And Michael, what was crazy, and this is all in the chapter, is that George Boleyn followed us around from room to room, pointed out different things that happened in the castle during his childhood, talked about his sister Anne, gave me a year that he was most proud of his sister, and I came home and I researched all of this, and I found all of this to be true, and it blew my mind.
Wow. And I gotta admit, it's got me curious since, he's talking about like his sister, if he ever said, it was really wrong what they ended up doing to her at the end and having opinion of stuff that happened after he was alive. If they ever comment on that, like,
Yeah, they executed both of them. They beheaded both of them. Henry VIII did, but
right.
yeah. So he said that he was absolutely wrongly executed, and he chose to stay behind because he wants to let people know that he did not do what Henry VIII accused him of doing.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's a lot of that going around in the Middle Ages or Dark Ages is a
Yeah,
lot of executions that was not why they were executed.
yeah. The Tudor period was a horrible time.
Yeah.
So that was just, I mean, that was just one of the many chapters in that book. But yeah, Ghosts of England was one of my favorite books to write
Yeah.
because so many
But
facts.
yeah, just I'm curious in a way because like Ghosts of England, they have so much history still going on over there.
Yeah.
Do the ghosts ever say like, in my day this would never have happened, or do they comment on more current events, or is it always their death and before? Do they ever talk about stuff that happens after they died?
They can't really see outside of where they chose to stay. So they can see how clothing has changed by the people that visit their castle or their pub or wherever they decided to inhabit. But they don't know what's happening out in the world. They don't know anything about the politics of things. They don't know how the earth has changed. They don't know that new countries have formed and some have not, or they don't know anything about the outside world. They only know what's happening where they are, unless somebody tells them something.
Okay. Yeah, that's always interested me because we gotta wonder, what do they do all day, every day?
So somebody asked me that, and again, to me, I have to liken it back to energy. So I think of an earthbound ghost as like a light bulb with no power. It just sits there dormant. And then once there's an energy source, that light bulb lights up again. So that ghost can communicate with us. to people on the other side, or pets, or anybody, whether they've crossed over in spirit or whether they're earthbound, there is no such thing as time. Time is a physical concept. So on Earth, 1 year is 365 days. On Saturn, for instance, 1 year is 29 Earth years. So it depends on where you are, then that's how you define time. But in spirit and as a ghost, there is no time.
Yeah.
Just like they died a couple of days ago.
Right. I will say I am looking forward to getting on the other side where we don't have to deal with time zones and daylight savings and how nobody does it the same way. It's not a universal thing.
I know, really. I know. It'd be great for me to say to you, look, I don't have to get up at 5:30 in the morning to go to work, but I do.
Right. And so I'm curious, last question, because I know it's getting late for you as well, is you had mentioned your appearances and events that are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about your books. Do you have any books that are coming up that you're getting ready to write or getting ready to finish writing that you want to talk about?
Sure. So I have a book coming out in January. I just finished writing it. It's going through the third iteration of edits, and it's about an investigation I went on in south of Boston, Massachusetts, in an old estate. And I was asked to join the team by New England's only paranormal drag queen, who is a really seasoned investigator. And it's fascinating because ghosts are very drawn to her because she appears in drag, which it's fascinating. So there is a lot of activity, and it was crazy. But as people will read when it comes out in January, that there were some crazy, chilling experiences in that particular place. So that's my next book.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I love about the paranormal community is, anyone can do it no matter, what your beliefs or your background, or I guess you could say in today's world, identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's not to be feared. And I think that's one of the blessings that you're giving people, even, with, pets in the afterlife, is you're taking the fear of, like, I'd always hear growing up, pets don't go to heaven. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the biggest line of BS I've ever heard, because if there's a God out there and he doesn't let pets in, I don't want to go there. So I'm like, if that's your heaven, you could have it. I want to go to a heaven where the pets are too, because I don't want to miss out on them. And
Yeah, in reality, I totally agree. In reality, pets would be the only ones in heaven, and humans would all be somewhere else because of the way they behave.
it's so true. But yes, and so I think it's great that you take and help kind of take a lot of the fear out of things. And
Thank you.
it sounds like in your books too, it's like, going, and saying, here's the history, here's these people.
Mm-hmm.
It's keeping the history alive, which I think is the other aspect of paranormal investigating that a lot of people forget about is, we go to all these locations that are steeped in history and we're like, yeah, we ran into this ghost or we ran into this spirit and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And it's like, well, that's great, but how's that going to help this place stick around, for people in the future? And so I
Yeah.
love how you're doing that.
Thank you. I find it's really critical to understand where the ghost lived before in their life, and why they chose to stay there, and what the history is, because all of that comes into play in trying to figure out why the ghost is there and how to help them cross over. And so, like everybody always says, we learn from history. If you don't know your history, you're going to make the same mistakes again and again and again. And we like the ghosts can't afford to do that. So that's my tip of the night. Don't stay earthbound as a ghost. Please cross over and behave.
And I gotta admit, I don't know why I didn't think about this sooner, but when we were talking about, being the battery, but yet energy is neither created or destroyed, what does happen to a ghost, say, that's been here since, say, 1000 AD,
Mm-hmm.
and we're now 2024? His battery has got to have, in essence, gone dead, so to
Yeah.
speak. So does he
Until
just
an
vanish?
energy, until an energy source can come around them to give them enough energy to communicate again. Number one, or number two, I've also found that a number of ghosts will cross over if someone dies close to their proximity, because a light will open for that other new person, and a ghost can then follow them. So there's that.
I'm glad you said follow, because my mind started thinking, are they hijacking someone's exit plan and making
No,
somebody else stuck here now?
it's just think of it as a human being. So if you're going into a store and you open the door, and somebody has been trying to get in there in the store and they haven't been strong enough to open the door, but you go in first and you open the door, and before the door closes, they can actually go in. That's kind
Right.
of the same.
Right. No, and I think that's great that they have that ability and they can do that, because then they're not truly stuck. They just,
Right? There's always hope.
yeah, which is great. Hope is a wonderful thing.
And
So,
I can leave you with one kind of funny question that I got. Why are there no dinosaur ghosts? Somebody asked me that once. And the reason is because dinosaurs are reptiles or animals, like and prehistoric mammals. Um, they have great instinct. So they know where a place is that's safe versus a place that is not. So when they die, they go to the place that's safe. They cross over. That's why 99.5% of all animals cross over. So that's why there are no dinosaur ghosts.
well, there you go.
It's instinct.
See, it just goes to show the size of a peanut brain can sometimes be better than a modern brain that only uses 10% of its capacity,
There
apparently.
you go. I love it.
So, thank you, Rob, for coming on and agreeing to be a guest. It's
Well,
been a
thank you for
real
having me.
pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great. I appreciate it.
Yes, and hopefully we can have you back on again, talk about some other adventures you were on and new experiences.
I would love that. I have a whole host of paranormal investigations that I can talk to you about. We haven't even
So,
touched on them, but yeah, it'd be great. Thank you.
yes.
And for people who want to find me, they can go to robgutro.com or petspirits.com. Goes to the same place. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all those places. So
So, all the links he shared and mentioned are in the bio. So, if you go in the bio, you should be able to find those. And like we found out earlier, keep your eyes on robgutro.com, because in a couple of months you may be able to get a reading. So keep your eye out for that. And and if until then, get the books and you can read the books and maybe get your answer that way. So thank you. Thank you to everyone in the audience. Thank you to all those that are watching. From my heart to all of you, make it a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world. And if you're asleep, may you have sweet dreams and wake up and watch the show tomorrow. I'm a host. I can shamelessly plug my show. So thank you to everyone and make it a wonderful, blessed day. And remember, as we've mentioned a few times on this show, energy is neither created nor destroyed. And in the end, even when things look their bleakest, there's always hope. So keep that in mind wherever you are in life. There's always hope. There's always another way. We just got to find it. So thank you, everyone. And thank you again to Rob. And keep doing what you're doing. And thank you so much for sharing what your gift with us. Good night, everyone.